Hi, thank you for watching my video. I'm so glad you could join me. So what I want to do is something a little bit different. I used to make handmade journals, and I wanted to kind of focus in on a specific suite of products from Stampin' Up! That we could use to create a simple but beautiful journal. Now, what inspired me for this is this sheet of paper that came from the Sun Prints suite. And the Sun Prints suite is in our current annual catalog on page 90 and 91. And it comes with some beautiful papers. It also comes with an embossing folder with the fern embossing folder, which we'll be using later in the project. And it also comes with a stamp set and dies. So I am primarily going to be focusing on this suite, these color combinations for the journal primarily. There'll be some other colors will slip in there that fits within these tones, but primarily we're going to stick with that. And the colors that are with this specific suite is Starry Sky. I don't have any more of this paper. I used it up, so I'm sure I will have some more within this process of making this journal. Night of Navy, Pacific Point, and Gray Granite. So those are the colors I'm primarily going to stick with, basically with the papers. The printed cardstock, the DSP, the Designer Series paper, and the thicker cardstock. So what kind of inspired me is this sheet right here. There's two of each sheet that comes in, and they're double-sided. This is a beaut. I love this color too. There's different variations of blues in here, and it kind of gives a cloudy effect, but we're going to be covering that side up. But this side here I really wanted to utilize, and we're going to be using the stamps as well. I really wanted to capture this whole sheet. So what we're going to do in this first video is construct the journal cover. Now the DSP is cardstock, but is a thinner cardstock. It's not as thick as our colored cardstock. So what we're going to need to do is, for this cover, we're going to have to support it. So for the journal cover, you're going to need your pretty paper, whatever you want to use. If you want to follow along and use the DSP, you can grab that piece. And then you're going to need the Night of Navy. You're going to need your nature print stamps, and you're going to need your white pigment ink. Now keep in mind, this pigment ink does take time to dry, so once it's stamped, it can't be put together until it's dry. So you can come back after you've stamped and watch the video if you're crafting along with me. So to start with, this piece needs to be cut down 9 by 12. And so when you're cutting this, you want to make sure that you are getting, it's going to be 9 tall. The 12 wide, it's going to be folded in half, so the journal is going to be a 9 by 6 journal. So you're going to want to make sure you're 9 high, you have your print the way that you want it for the height. So for this specific piece, because I want to fold it this way, I'm going to cut the 9 off the top right here. I'm going to cut it to 9. So we're going to need to flip it so that this part here is on the journal, and then cut it to 9 inches. And that way you're getting most of this image on the journal. Save this piece because that will be used in the journal making process. And then also, if you have a way to score it, you would score this at 6 or fold it in half. If you don't have a way to score, I'm going to go ahead and score this at 6. And then I'm going to go ahead and fold it. Half. You can take your bone folder to it. It's It's not really going to matter because this journal is going to end up puffing up. So just folding it like that, a light fold will be fine. So the next, you can see this is just a gorgeous, gorgeous cover. I don't really have to do too much to it. This is beautiful by itself. So the next thing you're going to need is you are going to need 2 pieces of cardstock from the Night of Navy that measure 9 by 5.5. Check my measurements here. 9 by 5.5. And the reason you want it 9 by 5.5 is because we're going to be placing the cardstock inside the cover for support to give it a thicker, so it will last longer and it will give it more support. So we'll be placing these on the inside on either edge. You will also need another piece that is 9 by 1 inch. This is wider. We're gonna cut that down, but that's what you're gonna need to do the spine on the journal. So let's cut that down, and I will cut one of these. I got some prep for us for this task. So I have one pre-cut. This other one is for another. I had 2 pieces, so I'm making 2 journals. So this piece here, to cut this by 9.5, you're gonna wanna cut, to 9 by 5.5. You're gonna wanna cut on the long side, the 9 inches for the height of the journal. And save these pieces. We're going to use those pieces. And then you're going to want to go ahead and cut it at 5.5. Okay, so there's your piece to give support to the inside of your journal. And we'll save these pieces. Make sure that's this one here. We'll save these to be used in our journal. And then for the spine, we need it 1 inch. So I'm going to score first at 1/2 inch with this little piece of paper. I find it's easier to score and then cut. So we're going to score at 1/2 inch and then go ahead and move it up to 1 inch and cut it so that you have a 1 inch spine scored at 1/2 inch. Or you can cut it at 1 inch and fold it in half. Okay, so there's our pieces. Now, for this, the reason we have it at 5.5, 9 by 5.5, or 5.5 by 9, and not 6 to go all the way to the center spine, is because when you fold paper and it's raised up in height, when you fold the paper, it's going to want to move a little bit and shift. So if you have one solid piece here that that you glue down, there tends to be some buckling. I find it better to cut it mostly and then get your spine piece. We'll fold this so it'll fold with that, and we'll just line up this piece here with the spine. There will be some overlapping, and that's okay. You're not going to see this. There'll be one more step to this process, so we'll get to that here in a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, we're going to decorate the blue inserts we're going to have in here because I didn't want it just to be a plain blue. So we'll set that aside, and we're going to go ahead and use our, I pulled out the leaf, and I have this back to back on a thing. This one, and this one, and we're going to use our white pigment ink to stamp on the edge. And for me, I wanted it to kind of look like it was kind of wrapped around this side, and we have a tiny bit here, so I wanted it to wrap around this side. So what we're going to do is go ahead and we're going to stamp along this edge right here with the white pigment ink. So grab my sheet here, get some, here it is, get some ink. Okay. So I'm starting with my biggest one. I'm just going to turn it, it's easier for me to stamp here, and it doesn't have to be perfectly stamped because it's sun prints after all, so images don't always come through perfect, but they come through beautifully. And just stamp it on there. Don't have to put a lot of pressure. Do be careful so that you can get your hands in there and smudge. So I'm going to do one big one here, and I'm going to add some fern, I think, in here. So I'm going to come in here kind of with a bigger fern. And then I'm going to go down a little bit just to... Okay, there's that. And I'm going to go ahead and clean that off. And then I'm going to take this other, I really love this one. And I'm just kind of, I think I'm going to do that one short, that one taller. And then I'm going to come back in with this big one here on this top edge. And just put that down right there. Okay. So now we have this beautiful white stamped on that side that's going to go on the first page. So I'm going to do is I'm going to set that aside. That's going to dry. I do have it prepped already for us. Okay, I'm going to clean off my stamps really quick. Okay, this one. Sorry if I'm shaking the camera, it's attached to my table. All right, that's good enough for now. Okay, so the next thing, we won't need our stamps anymore. I already stamped, this is actually going to be on this side, and I've already prepped a journal cover. So I've got one attached in here already. I've got the spine ready. So what we're going to do is, this one is already dry. I'm going to go ahead and attach this here. So my suggestion is, I did a little experiment. One thing I had a problem with from time to time with my journal is when you're putting paper down and you're gluing two pieces together to give it more strength and durability, you want to be careful. You don't want your glue too wet, otherwise this will buckle up and bubble up on the cover. This turned out really nice and smooth. So this Tombow Mono liquid glue is really, really great, and it has this end on it, and I'm going to use that to get the glue on so I don't have too much, and I can spread it a little more evenly. You want to really make sure you get as close to the edge as possible, but you don't want the glue too thick that it's going to seep out. You're going to end up with a sticky mess. So we're just going to head it and glue that, and when I get a big piece like that, I can just, you know, bring it in and kind of spread it out and get it all over this paper, the blue the blue piece that we cut, the 5.5 by 9. I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Because you do want it to be stuck everywhere so you don't have any bubbling. I love making the handmade journals. They're so fun to make, and it's so freeing. It's a really free art form. You can use some recycled. There'll be a little bit of some recycled in this one, but you can use some recycled stuff to help decorate it. All new. If you use totally recycled, they're called junk journals. And this should stay tacky enough. It won't be completely dry, that you'll be able to get this on there and it'll stay. It's okay if you miss a few places. Most of it will stick, and that'll be good enough to hold it. Okay, I think we're good on here now. Get a little bit more right there. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead, just be careful getting that on your hands. And also, if you have a fine tip on your glue, if there's a little piece that curls up on that didn't stick, you can just get that in there and stick it. So I'm going to flip this around because I want this going this way. I'm just going to carefully line this up to the outside edge of the journal cover and make sure it's lined up here, and then press that down. I'm going to flip it over and just make sure it's nice and pressed down. Okay, sometimes I am messy with glue and I get it all over my hands. There's my bone folder. I am going to take this and just kind of make sure it's all down. Now, I've seen these really cool erasers that everyone was using, and I thought, man, where are they getting that to get that off? You can use any eraser to get those glue pieces off. Okay, so we have that down. It looks like it's glued down pretty good, but I don't need to add glue anywhere. Okay, so the next thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to attach the spine so that it will fold and protect the spine. You do need, we're going to be sewing the signature in, so you do need the spine reinforced. And we're going to reinforce it more than this, and we'll go over that here in just a minute. So for this piece, you're going to want to put glue on either side of the score line, but not on the score line, because you'll be sewing in there, and that makes it difficult when there's a lot of glue right in the middle. So just go around the edge here and get the glue on that edge. Put a little bit more here. And then line this score line up with the score line that you have here and the bottom edge of the journal. And it's okay if it's off a little bit. This is all going to be covered. Put that down, make sure it's closing the way I want to. This is just off just a little bit. There we go. It's a little bit better, and then you can readjust your fold so that it folds the way it should. There we go. Okay, so now that's in there. Now your spine is a little bit more reinforced and it's a sturdier cover. This is good for a journal cover. But the next step that we're gonna do, sorry, I got messy paper here, is you need at least 1 inch wide of fabric. So I have a few pieces of fabric I have laying around, and I chose this one, because some of the elements I want to put in here gives it kind of a vintagey feel, and it's the coffee dyed paper. So this will help bring that in, but also the gray. It was the only piece I had actually that kind of matched the gray. It's a little bit darker, but it matches somewhat the granite gray that's going to be in there. So I chose this piece, and I've cut several 1-inch strips because I really only want to do a 1/2 inch on either side. The other thing you'll need for the fabric is some sort of good fabric glue. So I have 3-in-1. You can also use, what's the other one? Fabri-Tac. I have some 3-in-1 here. So what I did is I actually let it fray. I think the fray is really, really pretty. And if it's not fraying for you, you can pull some strings out and let that fray. And we're going to cut it so it's 1 inch wide. And we're going to have just a little bit, probably what, 1/2 inch or so, a little bit more, because we're going to curl it into the inside. So we're going to go ahead and attach this. I'm going to do it this way. Put some of this Fabri-Tac down. Now this is, you can just get enough to get it on there and then go back in and glue some more. I'm going to leave the top tabs without any glue so that I can get that turned in without getting it all over my fingers. And you can just put spots on there or whatever. It'll smear around when you get it on there. Okay, so I've got some Fabri-Tac on there. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to try to center it, but it doesn't have to be perfect. So we're going to go ahead. Let's see, I want to leave a tab. Do about there, I think. So we've got that on that side, and then fold it over. You might have to play with it just a little bit to get it how you want it, because this glue does take a minute to dry, but it will start sticking right away. Just that, and we have some of that poking out. Now we can always go back in here with some more Fabri-Tac, and I think I will actually before I fold it in. Well, we'll do this. So now that we have that on the spine, we're going to go ahead and fold these tabs in. So we're going to get some glue on there. Not in the center. We don't want to get glue down here if we can help it. That's stuck down. Now, if you want, it needs to be at least 1 inch wide. I only wanted 1 inch wide. If you want more to cover more of this, by all means, you can make it wider, as wide as you want. It just depends on what your taste is for that. Okay, get some more there and fold this flap over. Now we're going to go ahead and get this cut to 9 inches so that it just is the height of the journal. Okay, let's see. I think I want this piece here. Yep. Okay, so I'm going to measure this and cut this about 9 inches. And I am going to fray it a little bit. I love the frayed edges. A little bit on top. And it can fray more as, you know, we're moving it around. Okay, so now what we're going to do is go ahead and put some glue down this spine and get this glued down. This 3-in-1 or the Fabri-Tac is very, very, very strong glue. Okay, the strings off of here. Okay, so now that is glued down there. It does need a little bit of time to dry. There's our journal cover. I'll go ahead and see if I can bend it while it's still wet. So while it's drying, you can usually still work with this a little bit. See, we have this poking out a little bit. I might fray it, I might cut it off. I'm not sure yet. We'll figure that out as we're going along. But there's your journal cover. It's reinforced in the spine. The spine will last a long time. I'm just going to probably put a little bit more glue down there just to make sure this is down really well. And that is the start of our journal. The next part will be to pick out pages to go into it. All right, well, thank you for joining me for this little tutorial. And the next in the series, we'll be picking out papers and sewing them into the journal.